So my turning point was in 2019, but it actually started long before that when my husband, Dennis, was a founding member at the Christ the King conference. I was working for Christ the King at the time, and he wanted me to join, and I declined because I was already doing enough church stuff. So 5 or 6 years after that, I changed jobs and worked for a nonprofit that was really serving hands-on um, young women coping with poverty. And so he asked again, and I declined again because I told him I'm immersed in this work every day. I don't need to do it as a volunteer. So when in 2019, he asked me to go with him to the regional meeting that was in Marshfield. I agreed to go and came home from that meeting just blown away by all that the Society of St. Vincent de Paul was doing and wanted to become involved. So I really see that as a Holy Spirit moment, that kind of my eyes opening to what possibilities were. And then a few months after that meeting, the position of the associate executive director here was open, and I talked with Ernie about it. I've known Ernie for years, and was attracted to an opportunity to come back to continue mission work, but to come back to mission work that was aligned with my Catholic faith and values. It's so easy to be dedicated to this organization. It's the people, it's the work, it's the opportunity to grow in faith with the people and the work. Um, it- I come to work, and we're a Catholic organization at heart, but we're an organization of 280 employees, and three of us are required to be Catholic. So it's not an expectation in our workforce. And most of the people that I work with, whether they be staff or volunteers who come to volunteer here in the service center, um, are not necessarily people of Catholic faith or maybe of any faith at all, but the values that they exude in their work about the dignity of the human person and how everyone has to be treated with kindness and not with judgment. And we're here to help and not. Chris Kane uses the language um, of we don't want to call them the deserving poor. People don't have to earn what we give. They just have to let us know they need it. And I think it's that taking the judgment out of it. It's so easy to say, well, if they just did this different, they wouldn't be in this position. And yet I think about all of the times in my life when a bad decision that I made didn't set my life off the rails because I had people in my life who could pick me up. There are so many people who don't have that. And even if they make more than one bad decision, do we really think they don't need to eat? And so it's this incredible perspective of people who just want to help in a way that upholds the dignity of each person involved. That sustains me every day. I'm a cradle Catholic, and like probably many people of my generation, maybe many people of every generation, we grew up going to church and we learned our prayers, but it didn't really mean a whole lot to me until I was an adult. There were moments where I thought, this is something I should pray through before I was a grown up. But really, as I became an adult and met my husband, who is a man of very deep faith, he really brought me along. And faith is something you have to actively participate in. And so I think I began that intentional journey probably in my mid to late 20s. And uh, I began that was a journey that continued even when I worked for our church. Like, I was the most poorly educated religious educator. I could be a page ahead of the book in the kids because I could read faster than they were. But I had the opportunity there to gain some real training in religious education, in the Catholic faith, one of the things that was just eye-opening to me, and by now I was probably in my late 30s or early 40s, I don't remember. Um, but that was when I learned about that Catholic social teaching was a thing, that the Catholic Church has things to say about social justice and really good, important things. So I started learning these things and eating it up. What really changed for me was when I left working for the church and began working for a Christian nonprofit where I was surrounded by praying people who taught me how to pray all the time, everywhere, and that in leadership, and I truly believe this. I mean, I know it's possible because people do it, but I don't know how I would do leadership without faith. One of my incredible mentors, and she said this to me, somebody famous said it first, but she told me over and over a couple of really important things. And the first one is, work like everything depends on you, pray like everything depends on God. That somebody else said. Somebody famous said that. You can look it up. But the other one that I hold dear to my heart, that she would say, Julie, if you're working in God's will, and I know you are, I know you're praying about it. If you're working in God's will and you screw it up, He's big enough to fix it. And it is so reassuring because this is big work. And yet, my faith tells me that God has provided and God will provide, and He will give what we need in the moment to do the work, and He will teach us and equip us to do it. I heard a story. Our spiritual advisor for the Diocesan Council, Monsignor Holmes, was leading a meeting here after Easter, and he reminded us that for 3 years, when the apostles were with Jesus, He did all the thinking. He did all the deciding. He told them where they were going. He told them what they were eating. He did the work, and he was teaching the apostles along the way. And then He died, and then He ascended, and for a week, the apostles are sitting in a scary room, scared to death. They don't know what they're doing, and the Holy Spirit came, and they learned that they were equipped to do the job, and they went and did it. So even though there had been Jesus deciding for them, He equipped them for the next step of the journey. As leaders, we have to believe that He has done that for us and for the people that He has put in our world to work with us. So in 2019, before I started here, before the pandemic, we had about 1,200 volunteers who gave 10 hours or more of service that year. In 2020, remember keeping circles small? We had 82. And those 82 people showed up 2 and 3 and 4 days a week with the same people because that was the only way that it was going to work. And they did that until everybody was vaccinated. 82 people from 1,200 kept showing up so that people in our community would have food. Those are just the volunteers, I never say that, never say just the volunteers. But they kept showing up so people could eat. And Chris Kane and Jenny Troya, who run the pantry, have built that culture there, that they matter to one another. They matter to the people who come for our services. They matter in the community. And so they will take the time, Chris and Jenny, other staff as well, but certainly under the leadership of Chris and Jenny, um, they know the importance of sitting with someone and just saying, how you doing? Man, today was a hard one. Are you okay? Or they understand the time to say, wow, today was a hard one. Thank you. We did it together. And there's a difference in those. But they have nurtured that culture in our food pantry. In our stores, we see the same thing with Brooke Trick and John Cobb. Again, this is hard work. People give us their goods that we turn around and sell to people, and that sounds really simple. We have 240 employees who do that work, and sometimes it's dirty, and people do not always give us the nicest stuff, and it all has to be managed. But again, in that space, and this certainly started under Ralph's leadership, in that space of our store operations, it's about making the sales that fund the mission, and it's about taking care of the people who do the work, noticing them, knowing them. There is something culturally so significant here about knowing one another, and that is what the people are. Oh, there are so many moments of celebration. Um, Again, I'll take a step back and say this is one of the things that I learned at my last job is to see God in the celebrations, and I get to see that almost every day when when something more just happens. But the moment of celebration when we had our leadership retreat day, and our leaders came together, again, to really know each other across silos. And I don't think we're nearly as siloed an organization as many, but our store ops work in an entirely different building. Our pharmacist works in the basement, and the rest of us work on the second floor. Like, you get into patterns with people that you see every day, different than those that you see once or twice a week or once or twice a month. And so having that day where all of our leaders came together and really spent time in deep conversation, in knowing who each of these people that they work with are, has built something even more special here in uniting a team. I don't think that they were disunited before, but I think, like everywhere, a lot of that was broken during the pandemic, where we really did have to distance ourselves. And it was an opportunity to come back together and in a new way, and an opportunity to see the skills of others, to add those to what we could do organizationally. So that was a big one. Coming out of that, when we looked at revamping the process in the food pantry to make it so that people didn't have to wait in line as long, we weren't out in the street, we wanted to improve safety, we started that with our 5 pantry staff. By the end of the first meeting of that group, all of us knew, we needed to involve 2 of our retail ops staff because they are so good at process thinking, that they would bring that to the table and that they would take the learning back to the ops side. Again, this is kind of the secret sauce that is keeping us moving aligned together. We've got such smart, talented people. The impact of stronger leadership on the community is a mindset of continuous improvement, right? And working together for that improvement, tapping the ideas in the room, whether or not someone is explicitly involved in a particular project, if they have knowledge or skill, we now know that about them, and they're willing to lend that knowledge and skill to someone else's work. And so what we see is improvements across our organization that impact the community. So right now, we're looking at how do we draw more volunteers into the organization, and we're doing that from the perspective of improvement. How do we improve our invitation to volunteers? How do we assess what works, right? So does an e-blast to our shoppers invite volunteers in? Like, we can try that, and then we can see if any of them say yes, because we've got this mindset of taking steps and looking at what works and inviting people who have knowledge into thinking through that. So it doesn't mean that we can necessarily say, we've got this new thing that we're doing, and so now we're presenting that to the community. And we have done that. But it's more, how do we look at everything in light of where we are now, understand what the community needs are, and then seek how we are able to serve them. So we can't be all things to all people. No one can. So we have to choose. How do we choose well based on those two things? What are the needs, and what is our ability to serve those needs? And that's where the impact comes. So microlending predates our understanding of this process, but that's kind of what was behind it. We were hearing about home visits where people were needing some rent help because they had a predatory loan. And we were hearing that over and over and over. And predatory loans, payday loans and auto title loans, the entry rate for those interest rates is about 300%. And that is legal in Wisconsin, which is appalling, and we hope we can help make change. But it's what people are stuck with. And so we intentionally decided to see if we could change that. And we got help from St. Vincent de Paul organizations in Columbus, Ohio, and Dallas, Texas, who shared with us what they were doing. And we built a task force with lots of community experts who understand lending in a way that we don't, so that they could help say, no, that's not legal. You don't want to do that. But they lent their expertise. We had a banking partner who was willing to take this on with us. It took 2 years. But we now, as of October of 2024, have 40-some people who have received loans. We thought our first year we would do 15. We've done 40-some. We have just started with another banking partner, and we'll probably do another 15 before the end of the year. We have taken the next step in that, in looking at how do we make this a program that runs without running out of money? I think we've got a solution for that because of how we're thinking about it. We made a similar decision in a different program with our housing programs. We closed the housing we had for single women and mothers with minor children. You might know that as the St. Elizabeth Ann Seton House. That is now called the St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Program. We stopped providing housing because changes in the county with how people access permanent housing made women in this program ineligible for help. They were trapped in transitional housing and couldn't get out because there was no way for them to get into an apartment. So we stopped the kind of support we were doing. We didn't kick anybody out of the program, but we helped them in ways that we hadn't been able to before get into permanent housing. And then we started working with the agencies in the community who do housing navigation, who help people get into permanent housing. The way those programs work is that their services stop when when the lease is signed. And yet people who have been homeless don't necessarily make great tenants right off the bat. They have a lot of trauma to overcome. They may be new in the workforce. They're frequently in jobs that change often. They may be navigating childcare. Like, it is really, really difficult to be new in housing with little kids and a background of instability. So the Seton program now provides wraparound case management support for these families who are newly housed and provides financial assistance for expenses outside their budget. So every family in this program lives in Dane County designated affordable housing, which is not affordable. Every family in this program pays more than half their income in rent. So a car repair puts their housing at risk. Child care enrollment fees put their housing at risk. Missed days work when you don't have paid time off but your child has a fever puts housing at risk. And so this program, again, with that same kind of intentionality about what does the community need and how can we serve, is designed to meet that particular need. Really importantly, that program is not time limited. Families can stay in it for as long as they want to, with the ultimate goal of keeping children in the same school, which promotes high school graduation. So this is long-term thinking. So I would back up before the person to influences on my leadership. I was privileged when I was working for the church to complete my master's degree in servant leadership. And I learned during that program that leadership can be taught, that leadership, I mean, there may be innate characteristics that people build on to become better leaders, but there are also intentional practices in leadership that became very important to me. So that was the first step. The second step was working under a couple of incredible mentors at my last job who helped me grow into leadership after that training. And then truly Ernie Stenfeld. So when I was hired, it was with an eye to his retirement that if I agreed that it was a good fit and our board agreed it was a good fit, that they would interview me to become the next CEO. And Ernie made it his mission, I think, I don't know if you would say that, but it sure looked like it to me, that I would be equipped to be that leader. He was so open to my questions, me sitting in his office so that I could experience his meetings with others, his work with our board of directors and our district council. He just immersed me in everything he possibly could. And then he gave a year's notice for his retirement. So for the last year he was here, I worked even more deeply with him. And nobody gets that when they transition into a job. No one has that kind of opportunity to work so closely with someone that they're going to be following in leadership. And yet, again, it goes to the planning that this organization has a history of, because Ernie had that same experience with Ralph. They planned ahead for transitions so that it would be smooth, so that everybody would be comfortable with the change that was happening, or, at least have a chance to be prepared for it if they weren't comfortable, maybe. But it's that foresight and thoughtfulness of process. Boy, I'm not sure that it was a lesson learned. It was something I knew before I took the job as CEO, Ernie had a long, deep history with this organization. I did not. And so Ernie had a lot of people reporting to him that I just knew I wasn't going to be able to do that. And I mean, we're different types of people, and so there's a piece of that. But truly, his history gave him a knowledge that I lacked coming in. So I made accepting the job contingent on changes in our org chart, and we weren't sure how that was going to go because I really wanted Chris Kane to become our Senior Director of Client Services so that all of the programs would report through him. And so Ernie gave me the go-ahead to sit down and talk with Chris, and Chris said, "I hate management." And I'm like, I don't know. I think you'd probably be good at management. And he's like, "I can do the programs. It's the people. I don't like managing people." And then he's like, "I'll give it a try for you." And he is so good at it. He's so good. Because again, that goes back to his deep respect for people and bringing them along. I hope Blessed Frederick would say um, that we have encircled and embraced Dane County with a network of charity in the same way that he wanted to embrace the world in a network of charity. I think we've done that. I think we'll continue to do that. This is what is our vision for the next 100 years. That vision starting this year for the next 100 years is lined up with our strategic plan that says we're going to understand the needs and we're going to evaluate how we can meet them. And that's how Frederick went about things. That's what Frederick learned from Rosalie Rendu when she taught him and his friends how to go visit the poor. It was, don't decide what they need, but go and listen to them, evaluate what you can do, and go see how you can help. And one of the things that Rosalie said, and I love Rosalie, she was amazing. One of the things that she said is, love is your first gift to the poor. If you can take them nothing else, you can take them your love. And so if we model that, if we do what Frederick learned from Rosalie, we will continue to embrace Dane County in a network of charity. It gives me so much joy to see the work that happens and to see people never give up. So at our impact report last year, so would have been fiscal year 2022. No, 2023, sorry. What year are we? Fiscal year 2023. Our impact report said for the first time in our history, we did more than $5 million in direct charity here in Dane County, about $3 million of that in the food pantry. I just got the year-end numbers last week because our fiscal year just ended. And this year we did more than $4 million in the food pantry, which probably means we will top $6 million in direct charity in Dane County. And people just keep showing up to do it. The need is astronomical. So many people are suffering, and the people just keep showing up to do the work. The community continues to be generous. We have this wonderful, well-balanced two-legged stool of funds, which is better than most nonprofits who only have a one-legged stool. But we have revenue from the stores and we fundraise. And together that money has been able to meet these needs, even as it has grown by $1 million in a year and will continue to grow faster than that. With the needs that are continuing to grow in our community. But I also would like to tell you like kind of a personal, this is the joy moment. So I don't remember if it was last year at Thanksgiving or the year before, um, but the 6 pantry days before Thanksgiving are always the busiest of the year, and they can always use extra help. So I said I would go out and direct traffic for the line coming through because it's crazy. You need somebody out there because there's a lot of cars going in a lot of different directions. So I'm directing people into the pantry line, and they're waving and they're happy they're going to get their turkey and whatever. But car after car leaving the pantry line stopped where I was standing, rolled down their window, and said thank you, or my Thanksgiving is going to be great, or just over and over. They were saying Thanksgiving to me. They had no idea who I was. I was some lady standing out there on the edge of the street waving my hands at them. There were a lot of people doing what is truly heavy lifting, but they stopped and they said thank you. And there's no expectation of that, but it's remarkable to be on the receiving end of it. I can share a personal story of a home visit that my husband and I did. So I'm a member of the Christ the King conference, and I don't do a lot of home visits because I work full time. But he needed someone to go with him on this visit. And we thought we were doing a furniture visit. So what we knew was this man had moved into an apartment after he'd been living with a friend and could no longer live there. So he was moving into an apartment. That was all we knew, and that he needed furniture. So we go into this apartment, and there is nothing there. And we find out that he's been living there for 3 weeks. He has no shower curtain. He has no garbage can. He has no furniture. The apartment is empty. So, what an experience to have to ask someone to come into your apartment to see that. And yet the first thing he did was opened his refrigerator, and there were 2 bottles of water and a half a box of strawberries in there, and he offered them to us. And I almost couldn't continue. And yet we had this conversation with this man, and we were able to get him some furniture. Like, that's the easy part. But we heard his story, and we were able, with the help of our conference, to leave that day and go and buy him a shower curtain and a garbage can and some toilet paper. And, he was eating off of paper plates. We were able to go and buy him some food and then get him connected with the food pantry. We were able to get him a gas card because he had a car but no money to fill it with gas. And that changed things for him. And that's what the society does. That's what home visits do, is they take someone who has nothing or next to nothing, and they help them get started. And it doesn't matter that it's not enough. It matters that you show up. I think our community. We talked about this earlier, um, about what people do and don't know about St. Vincent de Paul, and this virtue of humility that we hold so dear. That we do this because it's a calling to do this work. And it's not about going out and shouting about, hey, look what we just did, we're so great. And yet I think our community needs to know what we do. This is a big part of our centennial year. We have been doing this work in Madison, in Dane County, for 100 years, and we don't intend to stop. We intend to bring more people into it. And if we're going to do that, they need to know who we are, what we do, and why they should want to participate. And I think if we can spend this important year telling that story, it sets us up well for the next 100 years. Oh, gosh, what would be the next, or a change that should be implemented in the next decade? I think first and foremost, again, we talked about this with Deacon Dick a little bit in our young people. So we have our youth service council, which is amazing. These high school students who become committed to the Society of St. Vincent de Paul through their high school years. Um, we need to find ways to invite not quite such young adults into the society. So the society was founded by a group of 20-year-olds. And, 20-year-olds, I don't think they're busier now than they would, but the world is certainly different for 20-year-olds now. But how do we get those 25 or 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds who are at a time in their life where they're seeking to do something more? How do we invite them into the society? And I don't think we're unique in asking that question, but I think, like every other organization out there, it is our young people who will be our future. And so we need to get that better. We need to tap into that ideal of service, spirituality, and friendship in this unity being something worth participating in. My advice to the next people who are thinking about participating in St. Vincent de Paul is to say yes, to give it a try, to find out if this is something for you. And that's whether you become an employee, you become a leader in the organization, you become a member, you become a volunteer in our pantry or our microloan program or whatever. Um, but say yes to this experience, and you will be changed by it, and you will be glad.